Right, this is a case where the right thing is being done in the state of Virginia, where convicted felons, once they serve their time, their probation, and everything else that they're required to do, are having their voting rights reinstated. And it's long past time that this occurred, and we need to. This needs to occur in every state in the union. Basically, you're telling people that are convicted and do their time and everything else that they need to do when they get out, that there are additional penalties. Well, hell, that's just not right. You know, if you serve your time, for the crime, completely serve it, then all of your rights should be reinstated after you've paid your penalty. But states have been punitive against people, just further discriminating against them, both in their ability to vote, their ability to obtain public housing, their ability to obtain Pell Grants in order to try to educate themselves, etc. That's punitive, and we need to stop doing that. Citizens need to be reinstated into society, and that's basically my opinion on it. Following is a clip regarding Terry McAuliffe, governor of Virginia, signing executive orders that are reinstating the rights of convicted felons once they have completed their sentences and whatever requirements that the judge gave them at the time of sentencing.
Virginia's Democratic Governor Terry McAuliffe is defending his decision to give convicted felons the right to vote, saying it is not politically motivated. Now, last week, Governor McAuliffe announced an executive order which restores the rights to more than 200,000 felons in Virginia. All of them have completed their sentences. McAuliffe says laws restricting felons' rights were a burden to African Americans specifically, but now many Republicans say McAuliffe's actions are an effort to help support former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in her bid for the presidency. McAuliffe has deep ties to both of the Clintons. He served as the co-chairman of President Bill Clinton's 1996 re-election campaign and was chairman of Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign. But McAuliffe told ABC's This Week on Sunday that politics has nothing to do with his executive order.
It was the right thing to do legally, and most importantly, George, it wasn't politics. It was the right thing to do morally. And I know these Republican legislators think it's politics. We have elections every year in Virginia, and if I were to do this for political reasons, I would have done it last year when I had my General Assembly up, and if I'd picked up 5,000 more votes, I'd have control of the state Senate. I would tell the Republicans, quit complaining and go out and earn these folks' right to vote for you. And go out and talk to them. I find it very, and in fact, I think some of the language that has come out of the Republicans, I would tell them to be very careful of how they frame this. Very careful their rhetoric. They have an opportunity to go out and get these individual new voters to vote for them.
Now, before Friday's order, McAuliffe's administration had restored voting rights to more than 18,000 people. According to the governor's office, that's more than the past 7 Virginia governors combined over their full 4-year terms. Let's return to our panel, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, David Swerdlick, and Sherilyn Harley-LeBon.
All right, in my opinion, he should have done it last year because he would have gotten those 5,000 votes that he needed. He would have flipped the legislature in Virginia, and then they could have passed a law that would have reinstated the rights for convicted felons to vote, and they would have been hard-pressed to overturn it later on.
All right, guys, what do you think about this? I think this is positive. I think this is good.
Absolutely.
Sherilyn, how do you feel?
Always great when people can have their voting rights restored, but there's always been a distinction between nonviolent and violent, and the problem I have is with the violent offenders, because in this particular case, they don't have to pay court fees or restitution to the victims. So when you talk to victim rights groups, they're like, they automatically have their rights restored, but there's no distinction between nonviolent and violent offenders.
And there shouldn't be a distinction between nonviolent and violent offenders. If you serve your time, whether you're violent or nonviolent, you've served your time. once you get out and do whatever it is that the judge required you to do, okay, in order to complete your sentence, all of your rights, and in particular your voting rights, should be concerned. This lady's got it wrong. She basically is agreeing with additional penalties above and beyond the penalties that the felon was sentenced to by the judicial system. That's just like saying that a person who runs a race and crosses the finish line, depending on the person at the finish line, that guy's got to be told to run an additional 100 yards or whatever in order to get the prize. In this case, the prize is voting rights. That is absolutely wrong.
And I have a problem with the violent offenders, which are murderers, armed robbers,
rapists. But let me ask you,
and other sexual offenders who automatically have their voting rights restored. That's what I have a problem with.
So if someone has done their time, they have done the probation, they have done their best to become a model citizen, you're still saying you should be held responsible for something you did, even though you paid all of the entire price that they laid on the table. You got to do this and this. You stayed in jail. You did this. You still are saying
No. I don't have a problem if you're.
I know. I'm talking about violent.
Well, the violent offenders, I think we need to make. I think it should be decided on a case-by-case basis, and to make sure that restitution and the court fines have been paid.
She is absolutely out of her fucking mind. If they paid the price, if they did their time at everything that the judge told them they had to do, then they should not have to do anything else. This woman's trying to lay an extra burden on these people, and I'm just not getting it.
Before you have this automatic restoration of voting rights, because again, the premise is, so if you've broken the law, I mean, you've murdered someone, and now you're going to have your full rights to be able to, vote on laws. I mean, that is really the distinction for me. Non-violent offenders, absolutely, but I would like to see for violent offenders.
Okay. David, what?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think Sherilyn has a point about violent offenders. There is a difference between a murder or rape and someone who goes to jail for passing bad checks.
Right.
On the other hand, I think you have a point too, that if someone has paid their debt to society, they should pay their debt to society. I'm looking at the bigger point that the governor made, which I think he made a great point, which is, look, if Republicans are so concerned, go out and earn these folks votes. There's a couple 100,000 new voters in Virginia. Instead of trying to figure out how not to let them vote, or instead of trying to coordinate an effort in more than half the states over the last several years to put tighter voter restrictions that in most cases seem pretty transparently meant to suppress part of the electorate, go out and get people's votes.
But let me
They
just
don't
add,
want to. They don't want to. They have never wanted to. I mean, this is a party that has historically, especially in recent years, just attacked the Voting Rights Act.
Section 5 is completely
Everything.
gutted,
Exactly, done everything possible to restrict voting in this state, in this United States, because they understand that, quite frankly, they are under a demographic assault as they see it. They know that there will no longer be a white majority in this nation, and so instead of trying to earn the vote of people of color, they're trying to restrict the vote. And I completely disagree with this notion that there needs to be some sort of differentiation between people who are violent, who are convicted of violent crimes and nonviolent crimes. When you are sentenced, you are sentenced. You're not sentenced to if you're sentenced to a lifetime sentence, you are sentenced to a lifetime sentence. If you're not, and you have paid your debt to society, why then should you have your voting rights restricted for the rest of your life, potentially, and have some other sort of hurdle that you have to overcome beyond what you were actually sentenced to?
I think
I would move on to talk about more politics, Sydney.
I didn't say that their voting rights should be restricted the rest of their
Well,
life.
it will be if they can't pay restitution, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but how do...
Their voting rights would be restricted for the rest of their lives if they couldn't pay restitution. That is a bunch of bullshit. And this broad, I don't know where the hell she's coming from, but she needs to get her head out of her ass and wake up, just as Avis indicated. You pay your debt to society, your rights are reinstated. End of story.
the victims' families feel about
But
that.
how about the
Restitution
sentence that they were given by the
and
judge? If they served the sentence that was given by the judge after the judge has already heard from the victims, most likely, and they've completed that, why after they get out of jail say, oh, wait a minute, we have one more thing you have to do. This is exactly a pattern that we've seen in the United States in recent years, where everything possible to restrict voting has actually gone in hyperdrive.
But the reality is,
you know what,
this law
we got to move on to more politics.
before blacks were even allowed to vote.
Yeah, this is
the law that Terry
this is an old
McAuliffe
law.
is changing.
Yeah.
This is pretty.
It's a-
blacks weren't even voting.
Right. It's a
Yeah, but just because blacks weren't voting then, they turned around and used that law because it's blacks and other minorities that the judicial system is raining hellfire down on, and then they're turning around, and because the numbers are increasing, they are making sure that the proper representation is denied to more and more people. You know, it's been proven that the African American community, especially males, are getting criminal records at a much higher rate than any other group. So, criminal record, convicted felon, voting rights gone, that just increases the power of the non-African American or non-minority person to control the systems that are currently in place. We need change. We need more African American and minorities to vote, whether middle class, lower class, they need to vote in order to enact the changes that we need. And this is a tool that has been used in order to control us and to obviously maintain the status quo, which is exactly the opposite of what we really want.
So this has been on the books for all felons for a long time. This is not a racial distinction.
good discussion.
Yeah, good discussion, but that lady in red, she needs to, somebody needs to sit her ass down and explain the facts of life to her as far as proper representation is concerned.